Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del challenges the status quo, questions everything, and empowers you to return to your core beliefs to make your life better. If you're ready to hear the truth and get your roadmap to the lifestyle you really want, the next hour will change your life. And now, your host, self-made millionaire, national award-winning investor of the year, CEO and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley.
Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and help begins. I'm your host, Del Walmsley, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. Today, my friends, I want to discuss the concept of portfolio progression. This is a concept I came up with probably 25 years ago. I've been doing this now for 30 years, so it's about 5 years into what I started doing, or 5 years after I started doing real estate. But I think it's something that's important if you ever want to be able to become a multi-millionaire type real estate investor as opposed to just a small mom and pop. So I want to take you back to the beginning when I got started and sort of walk you through the progression that I went through. Now, having said this progression that I'm going to explain to you is really a progression that occurs for those of you out there that are not involved in a system like Lifestyles Unlimited. Because the people in Lifestyles Unlimited are retiring within 2 to 5 years. They're becoming millionaires very quickly, multimillionaires not much longer than that. And they're not going through these progressive steps that I've gone through. However, at the end of today's conversation, I will be talking about this upper echelon of people and where they go and how they get to where they need to go and what needs to happen. So if we start back down at the beginning, when I first started investing in real estate, I was buying single-family houses. And, you know, it was just really simple stuff, conventional type financing. Put 10% down, got a 90% loan because that's what was available back there. Had cash flows of, $220 a month for the first 4 houses I bought. With only $2,000 down, that was like 130% rate of return cash on cash. And what I realized very quickly is that when you start looking at single-family investing, the rates of return on your investment are very, very high. Like I said, back then, I could see, cash on cash returns of over 100% of what I invested into each house. Even today, you'll still see, with interest rates on savings accounts as low as 0.5% to 1%, you still see 20, 25, 30, even as much as 40% cash on cash returns on single family houses. And you just can't match that anywhere else. So if you're a beginning wealth builder, it's almost imperative that you look at these types of high rates of return to get you off the bottom of the barrel, to get you up to where you've got some money to do something, especially if you're trying to replace your income, your earned income. You need to have very high rates of return on the amount of money you have. And that's under the assumption you don't have a lot of money. Now, there are some people out there that save quite a bit of money, and they can turn that money into cash flow very quickly. However, the approach that I took is not going to be your fastest way. There's going to be a much quicker and easier way to do it, but that's not what the conversation is about today. The conversation is about, okay, you're at the bottom of the barrel, and you're there starting out. Maybe you can only afford one rent house. I think when I started, I bought 4 rent houses was my first investments. I did that over about a 2-month period of time. Paid $25,000 per house, paid the exact same price for each house. Bought each one of those from Fannie Mae, which is the Federal National Mortgage Association. They were foreclosures. They had rehabbed them. I bought them rehabbed. And they did 10% down financing. A very simple concept. But at the end of 60 days, I owned now 4 houses, each cash flow $220 a month positive cash flow. Now, if you back up your 30 years, $880 a month of positive cash flow, which is what I had. For a guy that worked in the health club, that was a lot of money because, of course, that was tax-free income. It was covered by depreciation, so there was no taxes. And that was just pure take-home income from these rental properties. Now, I very quickly realized, okay, my mortgage payment at the time, I lived in a one-bedroom condominium, about 600 or 700 square feet, was only $450 a month. So this easily covered my condominium fee, my housing, paid for my car payment. And I realized very quickly what I needed to do to be able to retire was just to be able to replace the rest of my bills. So I went out and bought additional houses. Now, when I started, I was paying $25,000 a house, and I was a really good negotiator. And that's a joke. I'd go to the next guy when I bought house number 5, and I said, I'll pay you $25,000. The median price at the time was about $50,000. And so my great negotiation skill set was, okay, I've already bought 4 at 25 because somebody showed me I could do that. I'll just offer $25,000. And of course, the person came back to me and said, no way, never in a million years would I sell you my house for $25,000. I'll give it to you for $26,000. And so I bought one at $26,000 per se, and I don't know the exact number, and I don't think it's even relevant. But I did that again and again and again. So pretty soon, I was negotiating, coming in and saying, okay, I'll give you $26,000. They'd say, no, I'll take nothing less than $27,000. And, pretty soon it was $28,000. Pretty soon I was buying houses at $30,000. And at some point, I kind of ran out of money. And I also got to the feeling like, wow, houses were getting pretty expensive at $40,000 a door. My portfolio at that time was filled with all single-family houses. And I'd kind of run out of cash. So at that point, I decided what I needed to do was start partnering with other people, because people were seeing these high rates of return on cash flow. And let's say if you get a 100% rate of return on cash flow, very simple to go to a guy and say, look, let's do this deal. You put up the money, I'll do the work, and we'll split this 50-50. And I got a guy to agree to do that. We had a contractor buy 11 houses. And right before we closed, the guy changed his mind. He said, no, I don't want 50% of the income. I'm putting up all the money. And I said, what will you do? He said, I want 75%. And I had hit a crossroads right there. And the crossroads was that, hey, I had no credibility, other than done a few houses. I had no partnerships under my belt. I had no relevance to be able to look at where I was at and make a major decision whether that was being fair or not. So I felt, let's do it for the educational factor. And this decision to do things sometimes for the educational factor has led to my success throughout my entire life. That I'm not just doing things to earn a little bit more money, I'm doing things to be able to create options for me, to create challenges for me that I can learn from. So we went out and we bought 11 houses at one time. We put together an LLC. It was the first LLC I'd ever put together. It was way back when the LLC was just being started. Before then, everybody used limited partnerships. And I was really one of the first couple LLCs ever done. And we put together an LLC. We bought the 11 houses into the LLC, and I operated 11 houses. Boom. And, I think at the time I owned 8 or 9 houses of my own. So this was like an immediate doubling of my portfolio. And it was interesting because we purchased the properties on an owner finance contract. We found a guy. In fact, the truth of the matter is I found a guy that sold me one house. And his concept was he wanted to retire, and he owned a bunch of houses, and he owned a couple small apartment complexes and a fourplex and some fourplexes. And so his theory was he was going to retire and give these properties to his kids and let them operate them. He was going to sell them to his kids, let them operate them, and then he was going to take back notes and have income for the rest of his life. Well, he ran very quickly into the realization that the apple may not fall far from the tree, but it can roll a long way. And all of his sons and daughters who had taken over his real estate portfolio destroyed it. So he decided to take it all back. He foreclosed on all of his kids because they wouldn't pay him the notes they owed him. And I had bought one house from him on an owner finance note. And he came back to me and said, Dal, I'm taking these properties back for my kids. Would you be interested? So I bought 11 houses from him at one time. And those 11 houses were really the beginning of my partnershiping, syndication / willingness, ability, and knowledge to go out there and raise capital and buy large volumes of real estate. If I had not impressed the guy with the one deal I'd done with him, I would never have been able to follow up. And if I had not taken on the deal with my friend at the 25%, I would never have got to do it. We'll take a short break. Be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
You're listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes.
Lifestyles Unlimited is the real estate investor education and mentoring group that has been taking people by the hand and teaching them how to invest in real estate for over 25 years. Our students have been so successful at creating wealth and passive income that they've won local, state, and national Investor of the Year awards 10 of the last 10 years. It's easy to see why Think Realty magazine named us the best in the U.S. If you're ready to add real estate to your portfolio, go to lifestylesunlimitedpodcast.com to access our free live training event schedule.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Today I'm talking about portfolio progression. I'm talking about how I started and how I built my portfolio. Not that you should follow my direction, because I did it the slow way. It took me a lot longer to become a multi-millionaire than when the people are coming into lifestyles right now, because they've got all this historic information available to their fingertips and able to move much quicker. But I'm just showing you some things that I learned, sharing with you some things that I learned along the way that made a real difference in my growth as a human being and an investor. So at the point we went to break here, I had just closed 11 houses with this individual as a partner. And after doing that, now I had a track record. Now I had a story to be able to show people. And when I started showing people this story, and I had a testimonial, I had this guy that, as a testimonial, say, hey, this guy's sending me a check in the mail every month. We got profit. It's cash flow. It's great. It's this, it's that. I had no problem going out there and find other people that wanted to invest with me. So the next deal that I put together was a lady that I met, and we bought a couple houses together and in LLC. And then we found some fourplexes, and we bought 3 or 4 fourplexes together. And so now all of a sudden I've got fourplexes. In fact, I don't even know if that's the order. I think really it was back up. It might have been the guy that had 11 houses with. He and I bought a fourplex, because the same guy who sold us 11 houses had a fourplex from one of his other kids. And so he took that away from another kid and gave it to us, so we bought a fourplex. So now I understand the ins and outs of fourplexes. So now I find this other lady, and we say, okay, let's go buy 3 or 4 fourplexes together, along with a couple rent houses. That she bought the rent houses on her own. She did that with her daughter. She did the fourplexes with me, now that I remember the story a little clearer here. And, remember, this is all 25, 30 years ago. But what I'm trying to get you to see is, so I went from single-family houses to fourplexes. Then I found a deal with another group of people that was 5 duplexes. So it was 10 units altogether. And I bought these 10 units altogether with this other group. So now we're sitting here looking at this. You got to wrap your hands around this. I've got like 10 units for myself. I've got 11 units with this other guy, which is 21, plus a fourplex is 25. Then I've got 3 fourplexes, which is 12, so that's 37. Then I bought another 10 units with this other group that was 47. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I've got 50 doors, right? I'm moving along very rapidly with 50 doors at this point. And what I found was, at that point, it was very easy to replicate the system. So the next thing I did was I said, okay, I created actually a syndication type scenario, where I went out to buy a whole subdivision. And I bought, I think, 20 houses with one group of people, then another 20 houses with another group of people. And so we owned like 40 or 45 houses altogether between the 2 partnerships, but all in the same subdivision. So there was a master partnership that controlled all 45 units. and 2 sub-partnerships that actually had purchased each of the 2 groups. Then what I came up with an idea, well, why don't we merge the 2 partnerships so they're not in competition with each other? And we came up with the master partnership and put both of the assets into the master partnership, and everybody became a partner of the one deal. And the reason I did that was because I didn't want anybody to think that I was sending tenants from one group of houses to the other group of houses within the group. And so here we go. We had 45 houses on top of what I already had, and we're close to 100 houses at this point. I bought a few more on my own. And then I came to the conclusion that I needed to start doing something differently, because now I'm operating close to 100 houses, if not 100. And I'm doing all the work, which is not a lot of work, by the way. I was surprised. I only worked a couple hours a day to deal with this stuff. Maybe on a certain day I had to drive out somewhere, which is a long drive. Might take half a day to deal with a house very far away. But, you know, they were all over the place. In fact, the next purchase I made was to go back to the guy that bought 10 houses, the 5 duplexes with me. He came back and bought 15 more duplexes with me, which was another 30 houses, which had definitely put me over the 100-unit mark. But these are way out in Tomball, so they were, you know, way out there to take care of. And so I had real estate all over town. I had real estate as far north as Tomball, 1916 Jones Road. I had it at 1960 and Perry Road. I had real estate all the way out at Federal Road. I had Fort Bend real estate, Alief, Texas real estate. I had some down in towards Galveston, you know, El Dorado area. I had some El Dorado Highway 3 area. And then my next move was I made a decision. This was a conscious decision. I said, you know what? I could continue to grow this forever and ever and ever, add more and more people, more and more use, but it's not really getting me where I want to go. Where I really would like to be is I would like to be a larger real estate investor with less effort. So I made a decision at that point, and this was a very major decision I made in my life, that every deal I would do from this point forward would be larger or more profitable. In other words, the most profitable partnership I had might have made $4,000 a month. So if I was going to do another deal, that had to make at least $5,000 a month. Or if the largest number of units I owned in any particular deal was X, then I had to do more. So the first thing I did was started buying apartment complexes, and I went with another partner. I think it was the partner that I bought the duplex or the fourplexes with, and we went out and we bought a 16-unit apartment complex and an 8-unit apartment complex, both from the guy who sold me all the houses. This was the last one of his kids' properties. He sold them to me. They were down in, I believe, Lamarck, Texas. And so we picked up another 24 units there. But these were apartments. And for the first time, I had a manager. Now, I had a manager in the 5 duplexes. I take that back. I had a manager in the 5 duplexes on site. I had a manager in the 15 duplexes, which is 30 units on site. And now I had this 24-unit apartment complex, which had a manager. It was actually a 16-unit, and down the street was an 8-unit. 24-unit apartment complex. I had another manager. So now all of a sudden, I had management staff and I had maintenance staff. And for the first time, I actually had a real estate company with payroll, people getting paid payroll to be there. And this was a big step for me. And it was really the step that allowed me to move into the apartment industry. And after that, the next deal was a 20-unit apartment complex with some different partners. And then I went out and I bought I guess that's it, I have a 20-unit. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I've got all this stuff. What do I need to do now? And I came to the conclusion, this was the next major conclusion I came to in my life. As we go to break here, I want you to get this one. This one's really important. I said, you know what? I'm not going to partner anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start selling off the partnerships that I make the least amount of money in and buying another project where I buy a larger percentage of ownership. So now I'm going to own 50% or more of the deal, so the work produces large amounts of income for me and total control of ownership. That next change is what took me to a completely new level. We'll be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
You're listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes.
Get total freedom in your life, safely and quickly. Build wealth and passive income so you never worry about working until you drop, losing your job, or retiring in poverty. Over 25 years ago, Del Walmsley founded Lifestyles Unlimited. Del has taught over 100,000 people, just like me and you, the principles of financial freedom through his national radio shows and personal one-on-one mentoring at Lifestyles Unlimited. I'm excited to tell you about the real estate workshop that has changed so many lives. This workshop takes you inside what we do and what we believe. We'll share with you the 5 ways we make money in real estate and much more. Just like your personal trainer, the Lifestyles Unlimited team will motivate, encourage, and teach you so you can get in the best financial shape of your life. Call 866-971-8970 or go to lifestylesunlimitedpodcast.com. That's lifestylesunlimitedpodcast.com to register for the workshop that will change your life. That's lifestylesunlimitedpodcast.com.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Today I'm talking about portfolio progression, how I did mine, and not because mine was done the perfect way, but just because there's some things to learn from the discussion, which is to constantly be trying to improve or grow what it is you do in your portfolio and not just continue to replicate what it is you figured out how to do. So when we left, we were talking about a situation where I've accumulated quite a large portfolio of partnerships. And I decided that what I needed to do was to just continue trying to buy more and more partnerships, but to try to buy larger and larger properties and or buy properties that I owned a larger percentage in, I'll even own them all myself. The goal was eventually to own my own real estate because I saw how much profit these things were putting off. And like I said, I was only taking 25% in the beginning, but towards the middle and the end, I started getting smart, and I started buying 25% of the ownership. So when I bought 25 and they gave me 25, I ended up with 50% of the ownership. And I saw a much larger amount of money coming my direction for much less work. All this culminated with me selling off one of the partnerships and ending up with quite a bit of cash, and me finding a 64-unit apartment complex that was probably worth about $2 million, but the guy had run it into the ground. And I bought it for $800,000 from, the brother of the guy who owned it. Now, what had happened was the guy's brother was a multi-billionaire who owned golf courses and commercial real estate and Class A apartment complexes and resorts. And when his dad died, his dad made him promise he'd take care of his little brother, so he bought him a little 64-unit apartment complex, paid cash for it, so the guy didn't even have a mortgage, and told him, hey, go in there and practice this, turn this around. It's all messed up. If you fix it, it'd be worth about $2 million, and you'll make your first $1 million. And the brother did nothing. He sat on it for 10 years, made cash flow of about $150,000 a year doing nothing. And lo and behold, the older brother goes, look, I want my money back. You've had your time to turn this thing around. You had your time to prove yourself. So I'm going to foreclose on this thing and sell it, period. And so he found me, and the thing was so messed up, I said to him, no way we could rehab this thing, or we could get a loan on this thing. It's all messed up. Your brother really ran this thing into the ground. I said, will you owner finance it for me? He said, well, I'll owner finance it for you, but I'll only do it for 5 years. And I said, great, can you do it with, a minimum down? Let's see, we want $800,000. How about 10% down, $80,000? He goes, no, I'm not going to do it for $80,000. He goes, I want you to have skin in the game. So he ended up charging me $150,000 down. But what happened is by the time he prorated me all the rents, by the time I took the laundry room and sold the laundry room off for $25,000 to a laundry company, I came to closing with only about $100,000. I mean, all this stuff, all the prorated rents, all this other things, the sale of the laundry, interestingly enough, it just came down to this deal where I didn't put very much money into the deal, about $100,000. And I was making massive cash flow. This thing was just as profitable as heck. But what I went in and did is I went and raised the rents immediately $100 a door. I started fixing the exterior. I gave it a paint job. And by the way, the paint job, this is how backward I was back then. We had mansard roofs, which were, wood shingle roofs, which were falling apart. And it was too expensive. I didn't have the money to put new shingles on it. So what I did was I went down and I talked to some people at the paint company. I said, what can I do to prolong the life of these shingles? And they basically put together what I would consider black tar paint. And we got up there, my staff and I, we got up there and we sprayed these shingles with this black tar paint. And the tar sunk into the wood grooves and literally glued these wooden shingles back together again. We put a couple coats on it, and it was so water resistant that the wood no longer was being deteriorated, and it was glued back together with this black tar shingle. So I solved that problem. Went on and solved many other problems that was wrong with the place. It fixed up the units, put in better management, and lo and behold, this property was making so much more money that I was able to go ahead and refinance it and pull out enough money not only to pay the guy off on the loan, which I paid $800,000 for it minus $150 down, so whatever that'd be, $800 be $750, $650. I think I paid $850 for it, to be honest with you, something like that, maybe $900, because it seemed like the loan was $700 something. But I pulled enough money out that after I was done, I ended up with about $500,000 of cash, excess cash. And this blew my mind. Never before had I had that much cash in my life, ever at one time. Ever. $500,000. So I proceeded to buy the apartment complex across the street and the apartment complex down the street. So now I owned a 64 unit there, a 68 unit across the street, and an 88 unit down the street. And I now was a real estate mogul. I owned almost the whole street, 133 units. And I bought these other two properties for almost nothing. Again, I bought them from sellers that didn't know what they were doing. The one property across the street was absolutely renovated, 100%. Guy spent $800,000 renovating a 68-unit apartment. Had no idea how to property manage. The place was filled with purple Martians. He had bad debt through the wazoo. He had vacancy. He just had no idea what to do, and he was getting his boo-ha kicked in management, although his property was perfect. So he was across the street from me. My property was really old, a lot of deferred maintenance, held together by Band-Aids, glue, and string. His was perfectly brand new, and my rents were $100, $150 a month higher than his. So when I bought his from him, and what I did was I assumed his loan, $725,000 loan. I put $329,000 on credit cards. Yes, you heard me right, 27 credit cards, and bought the property with $329,000 down on 27 credit cards, assumed his loan, immediately raised the rents, and made the value go up $1 million. Again, I made another $1 million within 1 year on money from credit cards. I didn't even have my own money in the deal. Although I had the $500,000, you have to understand that. I had the $500. I knew I could get to the $500 if I needed it, but I had borrowed the money out of my credit cards with these kinds of terms that we had back then called no interest for 6 months, no interest for 12 months, no payments for 6 months, no payments for 12 months. And I had 50 credit cards. I had accumulated credit cards forever. Whenever somebody sent me one, I'd say, yes, I'd take it. Most people turn them down. And so I had really about $1 million worth of line of credit, which is unbelievable in credit cards. And so I used only 327. Now, when I went to the bank, the president of the bank said, how can you do that? I said, it's simple. He said, well, why didn't you have me lend the money? I said, because you charge me interest. He goes, well, why aren't you paying interest on these, like 20, 25%? I said, no. Look at this. No interest for 6 to 12 months, no interest for 12 months, no payments 6 months, no payments 12 months, blah, blah, blah. My effective interest rate on all 27 credit cards was only 3%. And so with a 3% effective rate on this $329,000, I made $1 million over the next year. Just a phenomenal phenomenal result. And then I went down the street and I purchased an 88 unit right next to this one that was run by a guy that was ready to get out of the business. He was old. He's tired. He was going into commercial real estate, said, I'm tired of running apartment complexes. He'd owned the property for 20 years. It was a senior citizen's place, and he hadn't raised the rent in 2 years. And he goes, I just can't bring in my mind to raising the rent on these old people, so I'm just going to get rid of this thing. I just don't have the stomach for dealing with old people, and I'm going to move on. Again, I bought this thing for next to nothing, put about $300,000 down, raised the rents. Across the board, made it go up in value about another $1 million. So you're talking about over about a year and a half to 2 year period of time, I made $2.5 million with only $100,000 out of my pocket. The rest was all what they call, profit. So there's a term for it. It's the house's money. I was playing with the house's money, except for the $100,000 which I'd gotten out of selling one of my partnerships. $100,000 my own money, made $2.5 million in 2 years, and that's the beginning to the rest of my story of being rich, wealthy, and successful. Now you notice, many people today start right there. Don't even go through all the stuff that I just went through. We'll take a short break, be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
You're listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes.
What would happen if you didn't show up for work tomorrow? For the next couple of days? For a week? A couple of months? A year? How long until you lose everything you've worked for in a fraction of the time it took to earn it? If this fear keeps you up at night, it's time to learn the strategies we teach at Lifestyles Unlimited. Start with the free workshop. Go to lifestylesunlimitedpodcast.com and find your true financial peace, like so many of our members already have. That's lifestylesunlimitedpodcast.com.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Today I'm talking about the progression of your portfolio and how to move it along and keep it moving. As we get through this, I want you to understand that my approach to progression is not the fastest way. It's not the best way. It's just the way I muddled through it because I had no mentors when I was doing it. I was just experimenting and growing the best I could with the limited amount of knowledge and help and experience that I could muster myself through experimentation. Nowadays at Lifestyles Unlimited, people are blowing away the results that I had, and rightfully so. You're not starting at the beginning reinventing the wheel again. So we left off. I had just bought 3 apartment complexes, a 64, a 68, and an 88. I'd made about $2.5 million on these over a 2-year period of time. And at this point, I came to the conclusion now, if you think about this, had over 100 houses of single-family housing stuff. I had all these apartment complexes. I had a bunch of smaller apartment complexes. And I said, you know what? This is getting to be a job. And I made all this money. I'm now wealthy. I don't really need to work anymore. I don't really want to work anymore. So I had met these people that had wanted to befriend me. And they were kind of like sycophant type people. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but, I've always felt that way. People that, hey, let me buy you a beer kind of thing. But I really liked them. And the wife seemed incredibly intelligent. The husband seemed a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But, that was just because he was a massive type A salesperson type guy. She was very down to earth, hardworking, analytical type person. So I made a deal with her. I said, look, why don't you come to work for me and you manage all my properties? I will give you a profit target. And if you hit that profit target, then we'll buy another apartment complex and I'll give you 25% ownership in that apartment complex. Now, I paid her, don't get me wrong, she got paid a management fee, not a management fee, but a salary. No, I think she got paid a percentage of profit. I can't remember how I paid her now, but she got paid. It wasn't like she was doing it for nothing. I think she actually had a salary. And she managed these 3 properties for me. And hither and there, whatever else, real estate came up in my way, she took care of it for me. And she ran them very well, very effectively, increased the profitability of them radically. I think made me $1 million or $2 million more in profit over a couple of years. And so I had to, come through with my promise, and I bought 140 units for us. And I bought this 140 units for us, and the cost was $700,000 down. By that time, $700,000 out of my checking account was no big deal because I'd made all this money on these other properties, and I was sitting with a lot of cash. And so we bought this 140-unit complex, which was really 104 and then a 36 across the street, so it was 140 total, and put her to work on these things. And she went to work and just blew this thing up, just did a super great job. And we ended up making so much money on it that we won the National Apartment Association's Real Estate Investor of the Year Award. In 2006, we won the Houston Real Estate Investor of the Year Award. 2007, we won the National Real Estate Investor Award. And the numbers, if I remember them closely from many years back now, was I put in $700,000, but in 2 years I had made $1.7 million in profit. That was my share of the profit. So you think about that, man. That was over a 200% return on my money over a couple year period of time. Just a phenomenal job. Now, what happens at this point is that her and her husband, by the way, was working for me as a real estate agent at the time because he was a salesman. He went and got his real estate license, and he was selling real estate for my real estate company, so he had something to do. They came to the conclusion that they don't need me. Now that they made all this money, their share of the profits on this deal, they said they could go out, number one, and use their own money, and number two, raise capital, because now they had the experience. They had this story. Excuse me. Just like I had my story in the beginning of this whole tale that I'm telling you, they now had a story, a great story. They won. They were the operations managers on a, National Apartment Association win. And so they decided they were going to break the partnership off, and so we decided to sell the property. We sold, and we went our separate ways. They moved off to Austin and went on and did their own deals out there. And unfortunately, later ran into some kind of personal problems and got a divorce, and don't really know what they're doing now. I think she's probably doing real estate. I don't know what he's doing. I think he's selling insurance or something. But the point is that I had this next major epiphany was I wasn't going to run the real estate anymore. I was wealthy enough. I had enough money to earn money from my money, not from my labor. So the next thing I did was I said, I need to really go out there and grow now. This was, this tempted my taste buds doing this project. I wanted to really grow, so I went out and I met a guy named John Ridgway. You all know him as Johnny Llama Ridgway. I met him at the National Apartment Association. We were lobbying Congress, spent a lot of time with him that day, talked to him, had lunch with him. And I said to him, hey, look, you've been in the real estate business for 25 years. You're vice president of the second largest management company in the world. Do you own any real estate? The answer is no. Why don't you come with me? I will teach you how to own your own real estate. And in return, you'll start a property management company and manage all the stuff that I do, you do, or we do together. That way, I won't have to do any more management. And I brought my fiance in as a supervisor for the other 3 properties that I still had that the girl was not going to manage anymore. And I brought John Ridgway in. And interesting enough, the week that John finally decided we're going to buy our first property together, which allowed him to open his management company, John's company gave him a pink slip and fired him, terminated him, downsized, and gave him 6 months' worth of income, of salary. And so there he was. He's laughing. He calls me up laughing. He goes, Del, you don't believe this. I was going to quit next week. And they called me in and gave me 6 months' worth of salary to be fired. I said, man, that's karma. That's the way the world really works. And the rest of the story is we bought 4 apartment complexes together. They're in 2008. That were the lowest price apartment complexes you could ever buy. We made massive millions of dollars over the next 4 years. And that's the end of the story.
for listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, teaching you the opposite of everything you've been taught so you can obtain the results you've never obtained. Join us 7 days a week. Can't get enough? Visit DelOnTheRadio.com to listen to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, access past show podcasts, and join the conversation.
The information and opinions you hear on the Del Walmsley Radio Show are those of the host, Del Walmsley, his guests, and his callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this station, its affiliates, its management, or advertisers. The Del Walmsley Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Del Walmsley Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.